hello, hello. You are listening to KDNK Radio. And this is your host, Reverend Hardy. This is the Current Ritual Public Affairs Show. And today I am so excited to have on a new guest who hasn't been on the program as it turns 4 today. We are celebrating so much. Lauren ONeill of the Sacred Headwaters. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming in. And part of the reason why I wanted to have you in today is because with the holidays and rituals and traditions and all the things abound, you came to mind as someone who could speak to magic and rituals. So whatever you want to share to the listeners, you can introduce yourself, and then we're definitely going to dive into some juicy topics today.
Cool. Well, congratulations on your 4 years. That's a big time to celebrate when you're creating something and to stick with something for 4 years and watch it evolve and birth. It's such a cool process. So.
I used to be such a mess on the board when I came in. Like
I know I'm like watching you. You're just like, no, yeah.
And now I just like know what to do now. Yeah. But like anything, mastery takes time. You just got to walk the path.
Yeah. And on that note, like practice, I think is... And like as somebody who works in ritual like you and has a lot of space for ceremony, it's really just a practice and a practice field, an ever-evolving practice field that we're always working in. And I know for me personally, the Sacred Headwaters has been rebirthed and rebirthed and rebirthed many times. My company and the things that I offer continuing to always expand and take on new life forms of their own, new offerings, new co-creations, all sorts of, it's just been a fun process of creation and letting creation kind of do its own work, which creation loves to rebirth and always be in the flow of the feminine, really that divine feminine creative life force energy that asks us to just be present with what's alive right now.
Right. And being responsive, I feel like, to our own internal world, that's why, my life has morphed over the years of being self-employed and kind of, figuring out as an entrepreneur how I want to show up. And that's what I've realized is a lot of the variability comes from being tuned into me and what you said about what's alive for me, but also what my community needs and what the people around me need. And then I'm responsive, and that's always a changing environment. So
and
it's
a
good
dance, like a really, really delicate dance of awareness of what's mine, what's not, what do I need? What does the collective need? What's unfolding in front of me? What does my community need? And being somewhere teetering in the balance of that always with heightened awareness and being able to always go back inward and be like, okay, if this, I need to adapt, what's in the way of that transition and how can I show up best? Just that's part of that evolution where I think so much of that asks us to get out of our own way.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of dipped your toe into a new offering recently at Craft Wellness.
Yeah. So
if you want to talk about that a little bit, because that kind of ties in with the holiday and ritual, we can kind of tap on some of that if you'd like to share with the listeners.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the theme of this year, I think for the collective, not just myself, has been like around doing, not just keeping things in visionary phase, which we're so good at. And not to be like an astrology nerd, but my Aquarius rising loves to keep me in this visionary phase of life. But
is that like the dreamy stage where we're like imagining what's possible? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
okay.
And that very like visionary, like ethereal, airy sign, like all that's up here, all of the infinite possibilities of the universe, and the grounding it into reality. I feel really balanced in that, my moon is a Capricorn and I have that earth energy when I want to show up in all of the parts of myself. Mm-hmm. And I also am an Aries sun, so I have a lot of fire and momentum to go and create. So I am a little bit balanced in my astrology, which I'm really grateful for in that way. But I do notice that I love to stay in the visionary stage. Mm-hmm. And so the wellness fair is something that was birthed in 2023. I was on a road trip looking at property in Asheville, and we stopped in Wilmington, and I was with a dear friend from like lifelong friend, one of my best friends from childhood. And she's not really like wooey, you know, she's very practical. Does she
like
in
shut
accounting.
Down when you talk about astrology?
Yeah, not shut down. She's open and curious.
We are part of the cosmos,
sure.
people.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty, you know, I walk the line too, but we're connected. It's all connected.
And I tend to surround myself, at least in outside of our community here, around people who are more pragmatic and logical and need more proof than, you know, balance. Feeling. Yeah. And so, yeah, there was this cool mystical, we were looking up what to do. It was right around Halloween while we were in Wilmington, and there was I think it was like a mystical fair at a local brewery. And so we're like, cool, let's go grab a beer and like go see what it's all about. And so we go, and yeah, it was really cool. It was this immersive offering with a bunch of tables of a tarot reading, and you could get your tarot read. And there was, you know, a mala lady, and you could make bracelets, and there was a sound healing lady with tuning forks, and you could get tuned, and a boudoir photographer who had one of those really cool setups that you would hire for like a wedding of like the iPad photography, and then you could get like printed out right then and there.
Nice.
Yeah, and she had like these like sexy Playboy masks and like masquerade masks that you could photograph in. So it was just really fun, very immersive, very approachable. My friend who was like, what the hell are tuning forks, was like, yeah, I'll sit on the chair and like see what happens. So that it kind of planted a seed in my mind of someday when I come back to my community and wherever I do end up rooting, I'll create something similar, right? Like bringing it full circle always of when seeds are planted and we know they're important, which in this case was knowing that there's a way to honor the mystical, and the magical. Yeah, that's like just
there's a space for that. We have, but there's not a space for it that our society creates anymore.
Yeah.
It's the magic. I feel like is being held by a lot of the mothers and a lot of the teachers and a lot of the people who work with children but magic is for everybody.
Yeah, and it's in everything if you can see it, right? So yeah, it was one of those things where I came back to the valley and I wasn't really planning on being around this winter, but the universe said, you must stop running away, because I love to travel. And yeah, it was a moment of do the thing. You know, if you don't do the thing, someone else is going to do the thing. And I've actually been learning that over and over and over again in my lifetime. I'm so good at creating visions. And I'm so good at watching the people around me be like, oh my God, I have this idea. And I'm doing the thing. And I'm like, we talked about that like 2 years ago, this thing that I was going to do. But I didn't do it, right? And so...
Well, they say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So we just say, great. All of us are needed.
Totally. Yeah. And it's just something, my friend Nicole sent me a podcast about how when we have ideas and they get out into the field, if you don't do the thing, someone's going to pick it up from the collective field and birth it, who has more momentum and fire under them, or more grounding, or whatever it is where they need, that you need to create something in the 3D material world. So yeah, it was just that this has been the theme of this year of like, okay, you have all these ideas. Wonderful. That can't just be it.
It's like, be about it.
Do the thing.
Don't just dream it.
Don't
be
just
it.
dream it. Be it. For sure. And so yeah, that was kind of it. I reached out to Dree on like a whim, being like, I'm just gonna put it out there, and if it's received, it's received.
And Dree is the owner.
Dree is the owner of Craft.
Got it.
Yeah. So Dree is the owner of Craft. She's a dear friend. I love her to death, and she's just always down to create things for the community.
They're doing wonderful stuff.
Yeah, and she turned it from Craft Coffee Shop into Craft Wellness, and just has been really orienting towards community-driven initiatives in the space that she's renting. And so, I reached out and I was just like, hey, what do you think about this idea? How about we rewrite Black Friday, and rather it being, just your typical fair, which I just notice, I love going to all the fairs in the Valley, but it's always the same vendors at all of our fairs. And while they're all amazing, and I'm so grateful for them to be there and show up with their art, it was kind of like how can we bring in our practitioners and our service-oriented people who are doing things like acupuncture and massage, different healing modalities that are astrology readings, tarot readings. You had a fresh farmer? Juice. Yeah, we had farmers.
Permanent jewelry.
Yeah, permanent jewelry artists. Our friend Tyler live drew some circles and was doing some live art. We had live musicians. And it wanted it to be really immersive and interactive so that anyone can come, so that it was fun. We had hot chocolate for kids and fresh juice samples and just things that were approachable to everyone, and something you know, like you could get your tarot read and maybe you've never had your tarot read.
And for anyone who doesn't know, tarot is generally, there's cards and there's all sorts of different cards and tarot readers will pull them and based on the card pulls give you insight about themes or wisdom in your life. Like I see for me, tarot is something that developed because it replaced eldership. Because we like lost community. I feel like if we were surrounded by elders, we could just go to them for counsel. Yeah. But since we like, for me, like the cards are the wisdom keepers now because I don't have my like elders right there in the tribe with me. So that's kind of how I hold tarot. So if anybody feels like, or like to demystify it a little or to create some level playing field, to me, it's meeting a valid need, which is all of us need counsel and all of us need guidance on this path that we're walking. Yeah. And so that's a ritual around that for me and the magic of
totally
eldership.
And I consult my oracle all the time. And it's one of these things that, yeah, there's a little bit of a wooey stigma behind it for those who don't understand. But one of my favorite creators, the way that he explains it is like, these are literal pieces of cardboard. What they have on them are symbols. And they're symbols that go across all of time, all cultures. They're relatable and they're a way of orienting us towards the resonation of a common human experience. And we pull them as a way to tap into the symbolic meaning of the depths of the inner world, right? And so as somebody who works in internal family systems, you begin to navigate the inner world and be like, wow, it is crazy in here, and trying to pretend like this 3D reality that we're experiencing in this outside world is all that there is. It's just, it begins to be like, wow, there's really an infinite nature to the human experience that we are just tapping into, and that most of us barely have even a fraction of capacity to begin to hold. And I know we resonate in kind of feeling like we hold a lot more than most in a way that's a little overwhelming sometimes. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things like remembering, you know, like certain people are meant to remember sooner and then hold and do the thing and be about it and create the containers where then other people get to remember. So I think that, you know, all of us are needed. You know, the Great Awakening involves everyone, but all of us have different roles to play. Totally. And that's one of the things I see you doing is creating those containers for magic or to connect to something that's outside of the day-to-day 3D, as you say, material, job, commerce, capitalist, you know, world that you can believe in. Or that's kind of what we're tapping into today is, isn't there another way to believe? Like, isn't there more? Like, can't there be something more?
Yeah, that's such a good way to explain it too, because how it's come to download into me was through exploring the witch and this identity.
Like the archetype of...
Well, so that's exactly what it was, where at first I was like a little turned off by the word. I was a little like, okay, there's a movement of the witch, and sure, cool. Got it. We love to be a little bit ritualistic and drop into our candles and our incense and our tarot. And so then as I kind of explored it, I had a dear friend come in, or we had a conversation about it. It was actually through a really crazy experience I had in Bali with a man who was from the Congo. And we were really good friends. He was a diehard Christian in a way where you're like, okay, like kind of like thinks, you know, like all other religions are secret like devil worship and we were in a Hindu society. He was like, they're secretly worshiping devils and they don't understand. And so for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to take everything you say with like a little grain of salt, and but I'll stay curious because it's a very interesting perspective. And so when we dialed down to, we had this conversation about the witch, and I was like, yeah, you know, like I'm kind of a witch, I'm kind of witchy. And he was like, why are you calling yourself that? And I was like, I don't know, because I'm an herbalist and I'm interested in wisdoms and cultures and land stewardship and all sorts of things that I associated with, you know, the feminine. And I'm a keeper of the dark feminine. That's been a part of my path lifelong.
Same.
Yeah, totally. So, you know, you've been seeing entities since I was 6 and working with spirits my whole life, not by choice. Mostly it was scary until my 20s when I used to push it away and be like, this isn't real. These are dreams.
Well, we're not given any guidance. You know, the guidance.
I didn't have a shaman.
How to navigate. Yeah.
Totally.
We lost that over the years.
And so, yeah, it was interesting where he was like, you know, where I'm from in the Congo, witchcraft is very real, and it's not something to be casually calling yourself. he's like in my village, if you were to go in there without me or without some sense of safety and really rooted into your God, you could walk out with hexes on your legs and you wouldn't make it 20 minutes without breaking your knees. Like, he was like, I've seen some really crazy things where I'm from.
And I think that's where the negative connotation around the concept of witch comes from, is from people who maybe take it into a dark or harmful
and have seen
place.
some dark magic.
Right,
So it was interesting. So I stayed curious about it. And I was kind of like, okay, maybe I'll rewrite that story. And then the universe took me on this roots trip to Ireland and Scotland and all these places where I was like, okay, similar themes here, where there's a lot of devil awareness of the dark. There was a lot
What's the balance?
Yeah, I was there for Beltane, and they had all these really fascinating rituals I was like curious about. And then I had a conversation with a friend who is very witchy, and she was like, you know, the whole thing that you were talking about is exactly the repressed witch. You know, like, you're talking about the way that it's been misconstrued for all of these years, and you should stay curious about that. And so I did. And I deep dived into it last year and just opened my door up to the possibilities of what it means. And it led me on this really amazing path of self-discovery, reclamation of the feminine. I started working with different goddesses that all of a sudden like dropped into my field that I had never really even heard of before. They were just showing up in my inner world and through my therapy sessions. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of Hecate or Artemis. I was literally calling her Armidas for a long time. I was like, there's a woman who keeps showing up calling herself Armidas. And my therapist is Greek. And so she was like, Artemis? And I was like, maybe. I don't know. I keep forgetting. Because, you know, when you're in your inner world, you're like in a little bit of like a different...
It's like a dreamy
consciousness.
State.
Yeah,
totally.
So coming out was like not always translating correctly. But it was interesting. Anyway, so I'm like dropping into this whole thing, and what came through this year was that there are kind of like 3 layers of consciousness we're working with when we're talking about the witch. Mm-hmm. And there's what it came to me and said, which was one of these goddesses, Artemis, I've been working with, and she was like explaining to me how there is the witch archetype. And the witch archetype and the wizard archetype, every single person has. For some people, they're dormant, but we all have magic inside of us. We all have superhuman powers that we can tap into at any time. We all come from lineages that come from land and ritual and ceremony and honoring transitions and seasons. And we all come from that. And where you've been displaced along that line is very unique to you. But we all have this witch archetype. However, there are some of us who are like a literal witch, in that we have been given a life where we have to learn how to cast the spells that are going to actually reshape reality for the collective.
In a good way.
In a good way.
In a proactive,
in a justice forming, divine feminine balancing. Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Love, meta-driven.
With what we're doing.
Yeah. Loving kindness is like the goal of my parts.
Witness, non-judgment, safety.
Yes. Space holding, bringing people back to the magic. So that was kind of, it was like, look, there are people here who are designed to bring people back to their witch archetype. Mm-hmm. We all have the witch archetype, but we're not all a witch. And we're not all a shaman. And it's this thing where I get so turned off when people are like, I'm a shaman. I'm like,
self-proclaimed. Yeah. That's cultural appropriative and kind of pretty inappropriate.
But it also like takes away from what a shaman is.
Exactly.
Which, as people who've like seen over the veil lifelong, I didn't have an elder to walk me over the veil.
Totally.
And the difference between a shaman that I think needs to be honored is that they are chosen in this life to come from a lineage and be walked over the veil at a very young age, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, up to 10, you know, like where you're still in theta brainwave state, you're still curious, you're still seeing the world through the eyes of what we would call imagination, but other dimensions, other worlds, you're seeing spirits, you have imaginary friends that are real, you have these natural protection things that you're doing, like spinning in circles and stuffed animals and collecting mud pies, like things that are actually what we could consider singing, witchcraft. Humming. Yeah, singing, humming, nervous system regulation practices. And so, yeah, it's this interesting thing where people who come into it later in life, and I would consider myself in this group, we've been with it all our whole life, but we were not chosen to be walked over the veil at a young age. And we were chosen to walk over the veil sometime in our 20s or 30s and start to normalize that world for ourselves. And have mentors along the way, but not like that one, you know, mentor, like the grandmother elder of the community to walk you over life
into the
long.
Culture.
Yeah,
totally. We've lost that.
Yes, and so for me, like that's the shaman. Is chosen. That is very chosen, and I think we do this thing where English is so limiting sometimes, and we like to just take the the word shaman and apply it to ourselves. But I really think people in my lineage, like the witch archetype is like they're shamans. And then I think there's like the witch, the wizard, the healer, people who are healers who can see through different realms and spirits and things like that and live in multiple dimensions and all of the, you know, feel a little bit like an alien here in this world from time to time, most of the time. But our role is to then bring people back to the magic, to bring people back to the witch archetype. And then there's people who are just meant to come back into their witch archetype and learn how to kind of be just in the depths of learning magic that's accessible. So like,
well, I said the other day to somebody, I said, you know, a paradigm's messed up when basic like survival stuff has been turned into witchcraft in a negative way. It's like knowing herbs, knowing how to preserve food for winter, like pots of stew, making like cooking is witchcraft, you know, like so magic, it doesn't have, so magic can be brought down like to art is magic, singing, dancing,
everything.
Like
it's about intention for me. I call it the art of noticing. And it's like, for me, when people are like, what is magic to you? The way that I've come to explain it is when we begin to see the seen and unseen forces and where they meet. And sometimes that looks like seeing a glimpse of sunshine that just hits the leaves just the right way, where you see that little rainbow in the dewdrop and like have a moment with that and say, wow, that's so magical that in this moment I am noticing the little microcosm of infinite beauty and magic and joy and the way things are unfolding around me in this divine moment, to bring that to my awareness. And then once that's in my awareness, okay, where is it going to go from there? And for me, rainbows represent my sister. So I'm just thinking of a hike that I was on with my best friend, and it poured rain, and afterwards we saw like these little dewdrops everywhere, and I started seeing rainbows in them because the sun came back out after this rainstorm. And I was like, okay, my sister's here with me. So it's like, where does that go for you? Can go wherever, but it's the art of noticing.
And we get to assign meaning. That's part of being human. So.
And it's the most important part of being human, that we often, I think when we get too heady and logical, we forget that we are meaning-making beings, but because of the magic, our like reticulator activating system focuses on things because it wants to bring more magic into our life. And you can use it for the opposite and bring more, pain into your life, but that's
rumination, control.
Sure. And it's not, and that's magic in its own right. Like that's part of your unique path and where you're being taken.
Totally.
But the magic for me is it's in the in-between moments, in between each heartbeat, in between each breath, in between each footstep, and knowing that there's this constant cycle of life and death. Like I breathe in, and then in that moment in between the exhale and the next breath, I'm actually having like a death cycle before I'm having a whole rebirth. The same thing in between each heartbeat, and noticing that everything is this intricate nature of yin and yang and dark and light and coexistence and co-creation. And when we look at it from that lens, we start to see how unfathomable the world is around us.
It's magic.
It's magic.
It's magical,
and it's
you
the
guys.
easiest way to say it. It's magic. There's no other words for it.
Well, since we're coming up near the end of our program, which has gone by so quickly with dropping in with you, let's let the listeners know how to get a hold of you, or like where to find more information if they're intrigued, by your presence and your mind. Let them know how to find more information.
Yeah, thank you. So you can contact me directly. You can go to my website, The Sacred Headwaters. I work with internal family systems therapy facilitation primarily. But I also have an alchemical portal program that drops way deeper into all these things like dream work, spell work, in addition to internal family systems and more like shamanic style breath work of
and
taking.
You mentioned you're an herbalist, so you incorporate that as appropriate.
Absolutely.
Which is cool.
And I have a little apothecary line that I do from time to time. I'm also the director of global experiences and media at Aspen Shakti, and I run our Alchemy Spa, which is a directory for mystics and practitioners. And so we are running a second holiday fair on the 21st, and we will be doing an incredible winter solstice event that will be partnered with Sheridan Semple, who is a total badass.
I got to connect with her the other day, and it was super
amazing.
fun.
We've been working with her at Shakti for a long time, and she does alchemical astrology. So basically like astrological coaching, very, very next level astrology.
Nice.
And so she's going to lead a vision quest, and then I'll drop us in. We'll have some cacao to open, and then I'll drop us into a yin and energetic session with a little sound healing, and it's
Yin
all
being
about
yoga practice.
Yeah, like a more restorative yoga practice, but about energetics. We'll be working with like meridian lion's kidney for the winter, so it'll be very informative about your energy body while dropping in. So that's on the 21st if people are around, and then got all sorts of cool things coming up. I have a retreat in April. It's a witch retreat. And that
you heard it here first.
Yeah.
You go to sacredheadwaters.com.
Yeah. And join us in Winter Park for, spell work, dream work, a group of witchy ladies just having so much fun out in the mountains. It's designed to be a lot of like play, like we'll make potions and make aphrodisiac elixirs and flower crowns and magic wands and all sorts of creative workshops while also dropping in a deep. So
I'm a big fan of play.
Yeah,
we all
so
need
important.
more of that. That's part of what unlocks the magic. Being able to be in a playful state, like neurologically. Like we can explain this. We can use witchy language. We can use spiritual language. We can use quantum physics. We can use neuroscience.
Like, and they all are talking about the same thing.
They're all talking about the same thing.
Magic is what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Pick your language, but we're all talking about the same thing.
So as we all enter the holiday season, whether we have kids around, whether we are a kid at heart, it's a call, like what you said. I challenge all our listeners to try to notice.
Yeah. And activate your imagination. You know, like it is a playful time. Your inner children are super online. And that could also be very, like a little trauma oriented depending on your upbringing around the holidays.
But be with it.
And
welcome.
And bring in the fun parts of what you had as a child, and what snow brings. The first snowfall, our inner children are always like, ooh, it's so exciting. And, Christmas carols, things like that, getting rid of the Scrooge.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first. Magic is real. You've been listening to KDNK. This has been the Current Ritual Public Affairs Show. Until next time. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Kat.
Yep.